staff that's concerned about my voice. Welcome. It's good to be back here at Northfield Township Hall. We appreciate the opportunity, appreciate Northfield Township giving us the chance to use this. And we've done it several times here. Glad to be back. For today, our moderator, as we always have a moderator who reads the questions, so I don't have to worry about that. And he's not on my staff, so that's another good thing to let it know that he's between the lines on that. We have David Trent on the board at Salem Township, this being an event. Sometimes we do it at Salem Township, sometimes we do it in Northfield Township in this neck of the woods. We're glad to have David here. So David, have the questions been brought in? I'll let you come on up and start working on questions. Let me just use the time to give a little bit of update of what's been going on. Not since we last met, but some of the things that have been topmost in the forefront in the last several weeks in the legislative process in Washington. And we just came home last week for our August in-district period. And it's been a fruitful time thus far, having the opportunity to get all across the district and starting all across it again. Had the opportunity to meet some business interests in Grand Rapids yesterday with Steelcase Corporation and Herbrooks Eggs Plant. It's amazing to see a farm operation that supplies 40% of all the eggs for McDonald's and other places, but has 9.5 million laying hens, cage-free, putting out eggs, and just unbelievable operation. Those are fun things to see about what goes on in this country that's so unique. And then what Herbrooks is also doing in Sub-Sahara Africa and trying to develop the egg operations over there to help economies of some of those African countries. So those are interesting. But last week we ended in Washington by passing a budget that was agreed to by Speaker Pelosi and the President and several others putting it together. It was a budget that finally was adopted. The President put forward and then worked on a negotiation with Secretary Mnuchin and the Speaker of the House. It's a budget that I couldn't support. It increases over the next 10 years if it's enacted, and that's where the appropriations process comes in. And we have the opportunity of not spending all that was put in that budget, but if we did, it would increase the debt in this country over the next 10 years by $2 trillion. I don't know about you, but that's a problem. I know about a lot of people in my district, that's a problem. I understand why the President supported it. He got to what he wanted for military purposes, making sure we kept the reconstruction of our military going from what had taken place. It's nice not to have the training accidents that cost us 2 years ago more lives in training accidents than actual combat situations. Simply because we weren't taking care of our planes, our implements, and even our military personnel. It's great to see an increase in pay scale for military families. That's good. I was glad to see a lot of the values riders that were protected, and the fact that a number of other things were cared for, infrastructure and the like put into the budget. But a mandated debt ceiling hike without vote for the next 2 years wasn't something that I could accept. That debt ceiling hike vote comes with the understanding constitutionally that we are required to pay our debts. That's a constitutional requirement, I understand that. But when you take any of the burden off of controlling it and saying for 2 years there was no requirement or even allow us for Congress to have any say on that and negotiate forward toward that, I have a problem. But nonetheless, it passed, and then went to the Senate, passed, and the President signed it. My hope is that during the appropriations process that will now follow, with the 12 appropriations bills dealing with everything that our government is involved with, both discretionary spending and mandatory spending, that we'll have an opportunity make a little more sense out of that and find ways to not spend all of that increased budget and set priorities that would work for our taxpayers as well. Beyond that, in some other areas, I sit as, I hope you know, on the Energy and Commerce Committee. I serve on the Energy Subcommittee and the Telecommunications Subcommittee. So the issue of communications are important in my mind. In dealing with 5G, I co-chair the 5G task force. I'm learning more and more about 5G as I co-chair the 5G task force, and grateful that there are plenty of people that are helping us in our understanding process as we move forward, trying to keep up at this time, 5G, trying to keep up with China, and have control ourselves over something that is just required for us living in the modern day world with telecommunications, the internet, all of the cybersecurity issues, etc. that go on. But we also had a vote on something that I think is very much nonpartisan in its concern, and that's prank robocalls and robocalls that are going out. Most of us probably have signed up for a do not call list and found out that it might have worked for a little while, but now we're getting plenty of calls. When I was speaking on one of my bills, it was part of the robocall reform package of legislation, I got a prank robocall or a spoof robocall as I was speaking on my own, which was a bill that took aim at the single ring spoof robocall where they ring once, it's hung up before you can get to it. Many people see the number. In most cases, it's a number that comes from your own area code. How they do it, I'm not sure, but they do it. And in many cases, the person's not going to call it back. As soon as you call it back, large fees are assessed. So this began our efforts to whack away at that problem, as well as a good number of other robocall problems that are out there, and asking the FCC to get serious about dealing with it and work out the technology. So that was complete. We were successful in getting full restoration of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative in dollars, and even offered in the budget process I think, justifiable increase, since it's been about $300 million for the past number of years. Had an opportunity with my full delegation, Republican and Democrats, in our delegation to go to the Branson Road bridge in Illinois, where the lock and dam system is. That is really our last defense against the invasive carp coming down the canal. Had an opportunity to see what the Corps of Engineers has planned there, to hear how far they are finally in moving that process. And we appreciate this administration being fully behind making sure that the Army Corps gets it done. A good point that came out that as of right now, there is no indication that one carp has made it past that lock and dam. They have found carp a mile up the canal, but for whatever reason, the sound barrier, you name it, that they've been attempting to use and testing, which will include sound, bubbles, and electrification at the last part there, to get any that might get through the rest or come in somehow on a wake of a boat. So far it's been productive, and we're looking at the starting of the actual construction of the project in 2021 and completion by 2024. In the meantime, the other processes that are there right now will be kept. It's so important for our Great Lakes to make sure that that invasive species, which can have health risks, physical injury risks, and could really decimate all that we know about our Great Lakes if they were able to get in. So it's good to see that happening. Beyond that, we're back here, looking forward to hearing concerns, ideas, and for that reason, we have this town hall today. David, why don't you begin with the first question or set of questions?
Yes, thank you, Congressman, for coming out to Northfield Township to meet with constituents from this area in Salem Township. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a number of years. years and had the opportunity to attend several of these in the past. And as an elected official, I certainly appreciate your willingness to reach out and meet with your constituents throughout your large geographic district. So welcome to Northfield Township in the Whitmore Lake area. You kind of touched on this in your opening comments, Congressman, regarding the budget. We have a question from Jim from Whitmore Lake regarding, are you in favor of a balanced budget amendment?
I am. I co-sponsored it. I guess that's probably the shortest and best answer. Yes, I am.
Do you think something of that nature will ever happen in the near future?
I've got to be an optimist. I saw one of the driving principles of Steelcase Corporation is to do their research and development. Their 6 of 7 principles was always be an optimist. I have to be. I can look at my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and I know some that might even say that they support a balanced budget, but are hoping that we never actually voted that way. Some that are absolutely opposed to it, feeling that we ought to be fast and loose and flexible in our budget, and there will be times when we ought to spend more. I get that. So it's a heavy lift, and then to make sure that all of the factors, all of the groups, organizations, special interest groups, and citizens in our country be necessary to ratify a constitutional amendment would do that. Don't know until it's tried, but I support it, and I voted in Congress numerous times to reduce by percentages our entire across-the-board budget. If we can't have a balance, let's start reducing. And so I think the record is there too.
Another question that Jim posed from Whitmore Lake was on the immigration issue as far as a border wall at our southern border. Are you in favor or against the building of a border wall?
I'm as I think you all know, I'm absolutely supportive of securing our borders. We have to secure our borders.
What about the wall?
Whatever it takes to secure our borders. Walls, electronics, surveillance, drones, or just using natural structures of the cliffs we have. Human capital on the borders if necessary, and it is necessary. Making sure they're supported. All that would secure our borders. I'm of the mind that I've had enough opportunity to stand in front of coffins of constituents of mine who died from fentanyl overdose. Fentanyl that has come across that southern border, starting in China, coming across the border, coming up to Monroe, Jackson, and Arbor.
Through points of entry.
And they don't get through the points of entry. We've stopped a huge fentanyl shipment at a point of entry. Drug runners aren't that stupid generally. They're going to go where they can't be picked up. And we know, and we've seen hundreds and hundreds of people coming across unprotected border areas, let alone fentanyl, heroin, and all the rest. Human trafficking, all of that. So I don't see how anyone, unless it's for political reasons, can hold it against an administration and government saying, for the benefit of our country, we're going to protect our borders. And we're going to secure them. We'll keep the open entries. As Reagan said, let's make sure the gates that open to freedom in the United States and to people who yearn to be free and experience the American dream, that they swing wide and free. Just sign the guest book and abide by our laws. And if they don't abide by our laws initially, and sadly now we're giving some incentive and rationale to them of saying, we're not going to secure our borders and we're not going to hold it against you if you come across illegally. So why not? No, I think it just makes simple common sense to have a secure border and then have an immigration system that is unencumbered with unnecessary stuff, technical terms, stuff, so that we have immigrants that can come across. We need more laborers. We need more high-tech people right now. We've not done the greatest job in some of those areas.
That's the issue. The immigration system is a mess. What are we going to do about
Immigration. And I contend for you, that when we secure the border, you'll have the support in general of the American population that is split on this and overwhelmingly support securing our borders. But we have a good number of people who just want open borders. Just look at the presidential debates in Detroit. How many of those presidential candidates were in favor of open borders?
No, they weren't.
They said so. So, bottom line is, the American people, well, if you don't think they are, then you're not in favor of open border either. I'm glad to hear that. Because we don't need that. We take care of that border. We take care of a whole lot of other problems to get finally to an immigration system that works and makes sense. At the very least, get back to what immigration used to be in this country when my grandmother and grandfather came over from Sweden.
Oh, there were no rules then, you just, I don't know.
Well, you bet there were rules. Just go to Ellis Island and read the stories of how many people would turn back because they were sick, they were infirm, they had mental conditions.
But everybody else.
My grandma made it.
But the
I'm
rest,
glad so.
the rest came. Well,
No, there were significant provisions through the majority of our history, and most of those provisions said you have to bring something of benefit to our country. That's all. Let's go to the next question.
Great. Let's do that now.
Mr. Congressman, Susan from Dexter was interested in learning about your congressional trip to the Ukraine back in the spring.
It was wonderful. I was invited by some of the members of the Ukrainian parliament who had their prayer breakfast after the United States National Prayer Breakfast. And they asked me to come and speak as a keynote speaker at the National Prayer Breakfast. I was delighted to do that. And a great opportunity for relation building. And to be there in a former Soviet bloc country. It still has some challenges, but they're trying to promote family life and values in Ukraine that they perceive were foundational points of America in making it great. And when I meet with guys like Pavel Ngurian, a parliamentarian from Odessa, and I can name a number of others, but when I meet with them, it's almost like seeing George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Hamilton, and others. I mean, you can only envision that that's what our guys looked like back then. They love their country. They see the challenges. They got Russia right there in their country, trying to take a lot of it back. They've got those challenges, and they're fighting. And they saw the spiritual component. So we actually, this year, almost 2,000 people filled up the space that used to be the Communist Lenin Museum. And in the center of that large auditorium used to be the big statue of Lenin. But a prayer breakfast was being held there. And with more prayer than happens even in the United States, it was impressive. And the next day I went to one of the regions, the states, and I spoke to their prayer breakfast. Then had opportunities to meet with other parliamentarians, leaders, some of the new administration, with the new president that's there, former prime minister I met with, and it wasn't a congressional delegation trip per se, but it was still an opportunity for an American member of Congress to have an impact on this country that wants to be free, promote free capitalism, religious freedom and opportunity, and moral values in their country. So that was where I was.
Yeah, why are we hearing about this today? What is happening?
You asked me.
I know, but you.
Can we see your speech from there anywhere? Is that on? Can I
I'm
find
sure
it?
you could go online and find it somewhere.
I have. I've tried. I couldn't find anything you said there.
I remember I'm a pastor, so when I give a speech, it was a sermon more than anything else. It was encouragement to them. It was uplifting prayer, and I was proud to be there as an American member of Congress. So they read so much about what's going on, so it's nice sometimes for them to see that there are members of Congress who are Christians, unashamed about that, but believe in religious freedom, or freedom not to have a religion as well. And so that's what I did. I don't think it should be sinister in any way. It wasn't hidden. We went through the ethics committee and we were approved for all of that by both Democrats and Republicans to do it.
Could you post your speech for all of
No,
us?
I'm not going to post my speech. I gave it. If you want to look online, it's probably there.
I've looked.
I know there are YouTube things that were on there. And
What are you hiding?
I'm not hiding anything. It was a great speech. So
Well,
Yeah, we have to
then
take your word
let's
for
go to the next.
Let's be proud of it.
I don't.
You are representing our country, you have the right to.
No, I was.
Your obligation to look it up. I mean, there's a lot of information out there.
You can look it up.
I can't. I've tried.
Well, that's wonderful. You weren't able to. You've been able to look up everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Call his office and they happen to help you find it.
His office is
Let's
not
go
going
on.
with anything.
Let's go on.
Congressman, with the recent events over the weekend in El Paso and Dayton, I'm not surprised that we have a number of questions related to gun violence, gun control laws and measures. I'll try to touch on several of the questions that relate to that.
Good. I was figuring that would come up and hoping it would. So.
Gary, it's either Greg or Gary from Ann Arbor, Iona from Highland, and Gary from Whitmore Lake posed a question about the red flag law that's being discussed and the implementation of that, and do you support that type of implementation, and in general, what can be done to stem gun violence, and what kind of comprehensive implementation could take place. And apparently this has come up in other town hall meetings in the past, and ideas have been brainstormed, and what new
So
ideas.
that's my question. I specifically asked because there was one of the town halls just after Parkland where we brainstormed about gun violence. You took pictures. There was a board. I think we should go back to that and address that.
This board right here.
This board right here, and what have you done?
Yeah.
A
we
number,
wanna know what's been done on
a
this.
number of those things have been worked on.
No.
Okay, that's the answer, folks.
Oh.
She gave it. Susan gave you the answer. No, it wasn't anything done on it.
Have you legislated?
So why don't we go to the next question?
No, hey, no.
So in other words, you don't care what you're saying.
No, I care a lot.
Wait a
We do
minute.
that.
No,
You're very
this is
dismissive.
fine.
That's not caring.
Have you introduced legislation to stop selling AR-15s?
No.
Have you have you introduced legislation to prevent mentally ill from carrying guns, owning guns?
There already is.
We have put through very significant legislation. The president signed it, and President Barack Obama signed a major piece of mental health legislation going toward this end. And since then, dealing with mental health concerns, better counseling, more research on what is causing the gun violence in the mental health area. We've given dollars toward CDC and NIH in funding for those things. Absolutely, we've gone that direction. Though, we haven't said in a direct bill that anyone that has mental health issues can never have a gun.
Why not?
We shouldn't. We shouldn't. And in fact, that's one thing the ACLU stands with me on, in making sure that people, just because they're elderly and now can't go through the IRS process, understand it, it's a mental issue, that just because they request help on that, they should not lose their opportunity to have a gun or a permit. There are military personnel who have self-identified as having PTSD problems. They've served our country well. They've shown no indication to use a gun, like two mentally ill people this weekend. But without due process or significant indication that they will use a gun wrongly, we're supposed to take away their guns as military? No, I'll never support that.
Same thing.
Due process has to be followed.
Have you introduced legislation for background checks with no loopholes?
There are no loopholes in background checks. There are no loopholes, neither at gun shows or online. Anyone who sells guns commercially online, gun shows, or in an establishment itself have to do the background
But
check.
are they all doing it? Do you know definitively that they're all doing it?
Also,
Exactly.
That's-
Thank you.
Harry,
That's the question. I don't know if everybody's keeping the speed limit out there either.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not.
I don't know if
talking about
everybody's
that.
not spitting on the sidewalk.
We're not talking about that. I don't understand, Timmy, why you can't understand the topic, stay on topic.
I'm on topic.
Gun violence.
There is
Not
no
talking
way,
about speed.
there is no way that I mean, I'm trying to compare your logic that I should be able to know every gun dealer in this country. If
No,
they're
that wasn't
honest.
my logic at all. I'm sorry that you're not smart enough to keep up, but that wasn't what I was saying.
That's insulting. Your question, that part's insulting.
I don't.
Forgive me,
He
forgive
gets
me.
respect he deserves. He's getting respect he deserves.
going on, have you stopped taking money from the NRA?
So far this year I have. If they offer me money, I'll take it.
Have you introduced
They're a legal organization. I'd take it from the UNW if they give it to me.
Have you introduced legislation to increase purchase period with background checks?
No, I've not introduced that because it's not needed. Right now with the mix fix that we did and the president signed, it can be done instantaneously. But we still have a 3-day waiting period that's allowable. And the person in Charleston that should never had a gun and had the gun taken away from him, if the FBI had just gone to the next system, they would have found out that he had been restricted from having and shouldn't have it again.
So
And it was given back to
Congress
him.
needs to strengthen that.
So we did strengthen it. That's what we did with the next fix.
Needs to be strengthened more. Have you, this is still from the working list, have you introduced legislation to start studies to determine whether lives were saved from private citizens with guns?
Studies looking at,
Whether private citizens in Texas, for instance,
Why
which
didn't
is.
you write this stuff out in the questionnaire at the beginning of the outside?
well, this is okay. This is part of the question.
Part of the question.
This is what was put down on a whiteboard at a forum. I have not done that.
So some of the,
But we do know, for instance, with the church in Texas, that because the guy came running down the street with an AR-15 style weapon, he was able to take out the shooter that took that church.
but law enforcement in Dayton responding in 30 seconds.
They took him out, didn't
Yes,
Yes, so
after
9 people died.
9 people died and 26
Right.
injured.
People.
they? Right. And that was a Antifa supporter, a left-wing shooter on that one.
We talked about research, and my understanding is the CDC is prohibited from
Yes.
researching gun violence.
The CDC is researching mental health that leads to all types of
But they can't
improper behavior.
specifically research gun violence.
Well-
Because NRA has pushed that agenda, and that's.
Oh, no.
And it,
No.
yes, it is.
No, it's not.
No.
No. No.
Yes.
Have you introduced legislation to raise the age?
No. So you think that an 18-year-old who goes off into our military and is trained to use a weapon, comes back after a 2-year enlistment period or 2-year period in the military, and is now 20 years of age, shouldn't be allowed to have a gun?
They can't drink?
No, I'm not introducing it. There's been no.
PTSD.
How old were the shooters this weekend? As I recollect, one of them was 24 years of age.
The other was 19.
We're also talking about future gun violence, because the trend is increasing. If we constantly look back and say, oh, look at this didn't fit our criteria, look at that didn't fit our criteria, we are spinning our wheels as you and others have done since babies were killed.
Well, I want you to know, I don't want to be partisan on this, but the only anti-gun violence bills that have been passed have come from Republicans.
Yeah, because you're in charge.
We're not in charge. We're not in charge.
Yeah, that's what
Remember,
I won't vote.
Speaker Pelosi, those two bills that are in the Senate right now would not have stopped those two shooters this week. It would not have stopped them.
Because they're not enough. We need to do a lot more.
Okay. What are the other ones there?
That's about it.
Okay. So we hit about half of
And,
those.
and then,
No, you didn't. You said no to all of them.
We know I didn't say it. We've done research.
You either said, oh, I never agreed to that, or we're not doing that. You didn't. You actually didn't address it.
He had Obama do for it. He had the Congress on both sides.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
We need to know.
There's some I'm never satisfied with, we'll work at it.
You need to do more.
Congressman, based on some of the back and forth that took place during this discussion, I think the elements of all of the questions that related to gun violence have been touched on in some way, shape, or form.
Well, let me touch on one more thing as well. And this is the not direction, but suggestion that I'm giving to the administration. I appreciated his comments 2 days ago. I appreciated the general response at the end where he said, listen, I want you to know anyone who has a good idea that will work, bring it to me.
What about his comments?
Now
that
I'm
we did
concerned,
before
let me finish my statement, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm concerned that we're looking to the wrong group to come up with the solutions. And that's kind of risky. And why do I say that? Because there's such a split.
Right.
And unwillingness to let this president have a win is one of those reasons. So my suggestion is to have something like a grace commission, where the selection will be made of noted authorities in numerous fields, because this isn't one issue. This isn't just guns. The president was right when he said it was the mental ill person that pulled the trigger, not the gun. He also talked about the mental health issue, which is a concern. But I think there's spiritual concerns as well. I think there's educational concerns as well. I think the law enforcement ought to be there as well. So I would have a commission where you had the NRA and anti-gunners as part of the team as well. I think you ought to have clergy, multiple clergy on it. I think you ought to have trained psychologists, mental health counselors. I think you ought to have CDC, NIH personnel there. I think you ought to have law enforcement and educational individuals as well. And maybe a few general mothers and fathers there too. But a workable group that's given, let's say, 4 months to come back with an outline of a plan. And then bring that to the White House and Congress.
But you just said
And let us
Congress
work
was-
from there.
You just said Congress was the problem.
Congress is the problem. Don't make them the ones to come up with the idea.
Sounds good.
Make them the ones to hear from people who don't have a political vested interest in it
How are you gonna get it done?
and have experience in it and skin in the game, as it were. And bring that then to us. But do it now with the split that's there. Even what you see in this room. To be willing to listen to each other. I don't think it's going to work. And I know Lindsey Graham and I forget who, the Democrat, they allegedly have some ideas percolating right now. Well, if they do it, it's good, great. But I tend to think it would work far better to have a commission like that and them responsible, not with any political party game in it, to come up with a solution.
Mitch will never let it on the floor. It won't happen. And you know that.
Well, maybe Speaker will never let it on the floor either, but
We're
we've
not.
got to try.
Hey, Tim, you gotta push it. I think it sounds like a great idea.
I thank you for that. I'm going to push him as much as I can. And because, folks, it's an issue we have to deal with, but I don't think it's just guns.
It's multi-factor.
And I don't think it's just mental health. And I don't think it's as simplistic as that. I think it goes back to spiritual values. I think it goes back to parents not willing to be parents, but want to be friends. I think it goes back to broken homes. I think it goes back to a lot of stuff.
Let's blame everything except the guns. That's,
If you fix the trigger finger, you fix the gun.
Other countries have
If
all
you
those
get rid of the
problems.
gun, you can fix it.
Every other country has the same
Folks,
problem,
That's how bad that argument is.
Folks,
but they don't
remember,
have these many guns.
folks, remember, we have a Second Amendment in this country. It's constitutional. You expect me to uphold the oath of office, to uphold the Constitution.
You said you want to get rid of the 16th and 17th Amendments.
the fathers never imagined the kind of.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes, they did.
9 people and 38 seconds.
Yes, they did.
So the spiritual Second Amendment is to
Yes,
protect
they did.
humans, not to protect the guns. It's to protect the humans
The-
that are the victims of the guns. And we lose sight of that when we argue about the guns themselves.
And if John Adams walked in here, he'd say, listen, free American people ought to fear their government beyond everything. And that's the reason why we want you to be a well-armed militia
Oh, yeah.
as
You
citizens.
think he didn't think of the Navy, the Air Force,
If
the Army?
you go back in history, you'll see that the reason we ultimately won the Revolutionary War is because we used tactics and we had weapons not inferior to the Redcoats, but equal to, and in some cases better. And if you went back and you looked at, for instance, I have I hesitate to say this for what some people might think, but I have an old style Texas Ranger lever action Winchester 30-30. When that came out, that revolutionized not only citizens for hunting purposes, protection purposes, but the Rangers carried that, and that was the AR-15 style rifle of that day. Why? It was short-barreled. It was carried in the scabbard of on their horse. They could take it out and use it as either a pistol or a long gun.
Great, let's go back to that.
So that says yes. They knew back then that citizens would come up and use weapons that were equal to what would be in the police force or the governmental force. But today, we don't allow that. There are no automatic weapons legal.
What?
There are no automatic weapons legal.
But there's 100-round chambers that can be fired without anyone.
Well,
It's
that's
not a lot different.
that's a question we can look at, but a federal judge in a California case just this last year said that California could not prohibit large magazines.
Why not?
They said that citizens ought to be able to protect their homes just like any criminal. And if the criminal has a large magazine, remember, they're not going to go by the law.
So when you say
Those two young men weren't thinking about the law.
You're done.
But that judge said, and I think rightly so, if it takes a drum magazine that holds 100 rounds in order to hold off a criminal who has taken efforts to make his semi-automatic, which is legal, into an automatic and try to protect his home, we're going to let him do that. That was a court that ruled that on a constitutional requirement. All that to say, I think we ought to be talking about these issues. But we can't come to a solution with people in each other's faces and angry just because we have a little bit different opinion or even a wide different opinion. When we lose the ability to forgive in this country, we lose this country.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you for being here. Next question.
Congressman, can you discuss some of the laws that you have sponsored that have directly benefited the citizens of Northfield Township and your district?
I would like to think that the robocall issue will benefit you if and when it gets through the Senate, which we have all reasons to believe because we work with the Senate on that to get it through. A number of issues relative to energy. My PURPA bill that I've introduced that will allow you to still have the incentive out there for renewable energy, wind, solar, hydropower, that the PURPA law back in '78 was meant to promote and literally force companies like DTE and consumers and Duke Energy to use more renewable energy. It did that. It did it well to the point now that those big companies have wind farms, solar farms, arrays, and major hydropower as well, along with their gas-powered and coal-fired, still a few coal-fired plants as well. And it's had a benefit. However, they can produce it more cheaply than the small providers that started out that they were required to pay to receive energy. All we're doing in my bill is saying, listen, we're not changing the requirement to have those as part of your portfolio, but we're not going to allow gaming in the system where financial people are coming and just just to make money off of that and build an solar array or a wind farm 1 mile from each other, and then treat it as a separate thing and get the full payment on each of those, which goes to your bottom line because you're paying higher costs for it. So that bill, I think, will have a major impact on Northfield Township, Salem Township as well. Some of the legislation that we worked on veterans issues, Debbie Dingle and I have worked together on, will be significantly help to you. Career education legislation that we've co-sponsored or sponsored that gives more incentive and opportunity for training people for the real world jobs and doing it back here and not through a federal program, but a state or a local program that meets the needs of what the job providers need here and gives the block grants back to the communities and even some businesses who do apprenticeship programs or paid internship programs to get people up to speed will be helpful. Those are some. I mean, if I'd have thought that question would be answered, I brought a list that the staff could have put together and I could have read it off to you.
And that question was from...
Let me also state it this way. One more thing, which I think would be helpful. Half of you in the room won't be happy to hear that I still retain as the most conservative, the record as the most conservative member of the Michigan delegation. 92% lifetime rating. But I never lied to you. Always told you I'm a conservative. I believe in limited government. I believe in people making decisions, making choices. But you also would hope that your legislature would be effective. There's a Center for Legislative Effectiveness made up of Vanderbilt University and the University of Virginia that rate legislators on their terms according to their effectiveness. In this past term, I was rated as the most effective member of the Michigan delegation, 30th most effective member of the entire Republican conference out of 237. Why? For my bipartisan efforts, the bipartisan bills I sponsored, the number of bills that were signed by the president and became law, and the power of the committees I sit on. Arguably the most powerful committee in Congress is the Energy and Commerce Committee because we have a huge purview. And then I sit on Education and Labor Committee, working on these issues of education, but labor issues, pension. I chair, now I'm ranking member on the Health, Employment, Labor, and Pension Subcommittee. So that gave me that rating. Debbie Dingle, remember the one I work an awful lot with? Debbie was listed as 89th most effective member of the Democrat conference, but the most effective of our Michigan delegation. So I'm trying in answering that question with what we're doing, what we're putting forward. By outside source, nonpartisan, Vanderbilt University and University of Virginia said that your representative, the 7th District, is an effective representative for you. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Congressman. That question was from Marta from A&R. Thank you for presenting that question. Tom from South Lyon expresses the concern about the ongoing legalization of marijuana throughout the country with the number of states legalizing that. She expresses the concern about mental illness murders that are related to psychotic drugs and marijuana being a stepping stone for higher use drugs as heroin and so on. At the federal level, with marijuana still being an illegal drug, what's your stance on continuing to maintain that policy, or are you in favor of legalizing marijuana?
As I've talked to people here in the state and those who come into office, including bankers who want to find a way that they can bring marijuana dollars into their businesses. Also for the little lady who cleans, as they've said, cleans the restroom at the marijuana grow operation. She can't deposit her money in the bank because it's tainted by the marijuana, and they are not going to touch anything that could cost them their license, under Dodd-Frank or otherwise, the federal law being what it is. I'm encouraging. Sadly, Michigan passed legislation or passed a referendum this last go around, not thinking about a lot of things that are impacted by legalizing recreational marijuana. I'm not going to debate medicinal use of marijuana. I'll leave that to the scientists and the medical practitioners. And there's a wide variety of viewpoints on that, of its efficacy for what it's supposed to do. But remember, the marijuana today isn't the marijuana back when I was in high school and college in the 60s, age of Aquarius. A lot more potent than we're seeing right now on the streets. But I would like to ask our citizens to spend a little time, take a little time to see the outcomes of states like Colorado. I talk with Colorado members in Congress. I also talk with Oklahoma representatives who are deaf on recreational marijuana. The impact that it's had on their states, the cost, the fact that cartels now can come up to Colorado, legally grow, but still, without having to cross the border, the U.S. border, make incursions into Oklahoma and surrounding states and ply their wares, and the impact that that's having. The auto access, the businesses, even in Colorado, not known to be a huge manufacturing state, but the challenges of finding people who can pass a drug test and stay employed. When I go to manufacturers, small business owners all over my district, that is their biggest gripe. They don't care about a person having the ability on the weekend, if it's just selected a weekend, have a party and have marijuana. But they can't tell how long that marijuana's been there. And if they do a drug test for a lift truck driver or a crane operator or a school bus driver, or you name it, they've got to fire them. And right now, with 60,000 truck seats without a human seat in it, for lack of truck drivers, without crane operators, lift truck drivers, manufacturing line operators, enough. 3.7% unemployment rate, 7 million jobs still going lacking for someone to fill that job. They're saying, what in the world did we do? Even if it doesn't cause some of the medical problems that we're reading about to especially impact on teens and young adults with the developing brain. So frankly, I'm very concerned about that. And I think in any way to continue to hold back wholesale involvement on that across the nation for the benefit of our country, it's economics, yes, but I think it's solar as well, of having people that are ready and willing to perform the jobs, are capable to do it without causing concerns about their fellow employees, whether a crane operator is going to drop something on them. And I worked as a steel mills as a hooker, hooking up the cranes, standing right under those things, big pig iron and all the rest. I would hate to think that on Monday morning he came in after a good party on Saturday and Sunday. That would be a concern to me. So that's the best answer I can give. I don't think we're there yet. And I think we have great concerns. And when like I said, I've stood in front of too many coffins of young people, relatively young people, young adults, who were beat by the drug demon. And every one of those that I've stood in front of had marijuana in their background as well. Not just fentanyl, not just heroin, not just cocaine. So I think America ought to put on its thinking cap, as we used to say. And while it might be enjoyable, while it might not cause problems, if we look at it more, right now we've not seen that. And Colorado is one, they have all sorts of problems, and I'm concerned about that.
Congressman Sharon and Rachel, both of Dexter and Coyote from Whitmore Lake, posed questions that are similar in nature regarding the town halls, the hours that they are available to their constituents as far as conflict with working people that may not be able to attend. Could you speak to
Lack of notification.
establishment of those, how people are notified about those, and response from your staff if people submit a question online and get a lack of response?
Well, we can check out if we get a lack of response, and most times when we have people tell us that, we go back and check. And we have a system in place, it's not just our system, it's a system we pay for, that can track any letter, phone call, or email. Sadly, too many times we find out nothing came through. Our staff responds. Now, it may not be in 24 hours, but I can bet you. Yeah, I would ask you to turn that off and respect the rest of the people here.
No, that's one of your constituents.
I would ask you to respect the rest of the people here who came to this meeting.
But she couldn't,
Well, she couldn't, and there are other people that can't. And there were times when we had, just recently in Hudson, we had it in the late afternoon. What was it, 5:30? We had it there. We have it in the morning, we have it times like this, and we do it, and it doesn't work for everybody. But then we have teletown halls that take place generally from 7:15 to 8 o'clock or 8:15 at night.
that was one of the.
And so we do that as well. On the issue of notification, and we've answered this for you many times. So you don't like the answer, and that's just how it's going to be. I'm sorry. But we also have requirements that are given to us from Capitol Police, the Sergeant at Arms, about security issues and the securities that we have to undertake. I don't know how many of you have had death threats, have had firebomb threats, have had FBI go out and collect these people. And there is a reason why we notify as we notify, because of what goes on.
You refuse to listen to one of your.
So the next question.
Sir, how do we get onto your telephone?
You're here.
Telephone.
Your phone number is called by a nonpartisan entity that we pay money to call.
I have lived in your district for 11 years. I've never gotten one.
I don't know why. I don't know why. I can't answer that.
They only answer Republican questions on those telecom calls anyway.
You know that's not true. You know that's not true. You know that's not true. I've taken all sorts of questions.
But sir.
Yes, sir. Go on.
Congressman Stephen from Monroe asks that recently at the Monroe County Parade that made statewide news, there was a car that had a completely painted Confederate symbol on it. The Confederate flag also was raised in the air above it. Is the Confederate flag a racist symbol? And does it deserve a place of celebration in your district?
I would have to ask the person why he was doing that. I wouldn't do that. I don't know this person.
In general,
I never saw this. I was at the front of the parade, almost leading the parade, so I never saw that. But with what's going on in our society and the political correctness that's on, even to the point of saying we don't even talk about history, I would suggest that would probably, in his case, be an in-your-face, I'm going to run this flag, even though people have said this is a racist symbol.
Even though it hurts people?
And other people it doesn't hurt. But in days gone by, we could accept differences of opinion. Now we can. I wouldn't do that. But I can't say whether he thought it was racist or not.
But it's not necessarily a racist symbol, that's your position?
No, it's not only a racist symbol. It can be a racist symbol, definitely. And I know people who are racist who have tattooed the Confederate flag on their body. I know that. But I also know historians, legitimate historians, are saying, what are we doing? When we're tearing down statues of Stonewall Jackson or Lee, who were great Americans in a sense of love for the country, but their constitutional understanding was that they were being violated by a federal government. Back then, it hadn't grown as big as today. That was telling them what to do. So that's why they made those choices. There are historians that say we ought to learn from history, and we shouldn't tear down these statues.
Take
So,
all those statues and put them in a Confederate museum, so people that want to see them can go see them.
well, down south, you'll be interested to know that there are a number of my southern colleagues, Democrat and Republican, who still call the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression. So,
With regard to
and they aren't racist.
How amusing.
They aren't racist.
my question about the minimum.
And I think between being able to forgive, if we lose that in our country, we lose our country. And if we also are willing to be offended by everything,
Have you told that to Trump?
wow.
But with forgiveness comes the idea that you've learned and redemption. No?
Have you learned?
Yes.
That's what's important.
My question,
Have I learned? That's what's important.
that was my question. So did you see any of the news coverage of that?
I saw none of it.
You didn't. So you don't know what the rally.
I don't even know
looked
what it
like?
was. I didn't know it was in until you asked the question. I'm trusting you that it was in.
You must have seen Confederate flags around the district, and right, and
I
so
answered that already.
right.
I've seen some.
So it doesn't bother you.
No, that is a pure loaded question. I would like to know that person. Why do they have that?
Do you know anybody
Are
personally
they
that
from
displays it?
Alabama? Are they from Mississippi? Do they feel that their states have been stepped on by being forced?
In the district, I'm talking about in the
No, but
district.
they probably come from a southern state. Or they may be racist. I don't know.
So you don't
That's
know you don't know anybody in the district that displays the Confederate flag?
Do I know them personally?
Yeah.
No.
You don't know? Okay, then that's the answer.
Congressman, one last question.
Did I answer that question? I don't know anybody personally who displays it, though I've seen Confederate flags in my district. But I don't know.
Congressman, the last question for today is a twofer, one from Judy, one from Greg, both of Ann Arbor, who want to inquire about your support of the president and his policies. And we'll let you have the last word.
I love his policies. I love his policies. That shouldn't be new.
That's not actually what my
That shouldn't be new.
Could you name a policy?
That shouldn't be new. I love this tax cut that he signed.
No.
That increased our what?
No, it
And
didn't.
reduce my tax burden.
Oh, it's,
That wasn't my
you know,
question. Can I ask my
it's
question?
tough. It's tough. I'm answering that question. You've had your time to make your statements, and I think you made it. And I think you made them well.
question, but he misread it. He
My
did not
my
respond to my
issue, I support the policy of the president. The economy is the best it's been in 50 years. Going back to when I graduated from high school, they haven't had a unemployment rate anywhere approaching that since that time. We have more African Americans
Why are you afraid of our real
employed
questions?
than we've had before.
Why do you keep the radio on?
We, I like his policies. Do I like all his tweets? No. Do I like all his tweets? No. Absolutely not. I'd say 20% could go away and I'd be happy. But he's the president. He was elected by the people. He's done a great job in turning this economy around. He's got trade deals that are going well and have been consummated with
Yeah, that's why we
Korea,
have a 700
that have been consummated with NATO, with looks like, especially since last Friday or Friday a week ago, 14 Democrats, my colleagues of mine, said, Madam Speaker, we want you to bring the USMCA trade deal to the floor in September. They understand, as Republicans understand, that this will help our ag economy, this will help our manufacturing economy, this will help our economy in general. And then it says to China, you're the only one lagging. So, no, I love his policies. His personality, he's a New Yorker. He's a New Yorker. He's a tough guy, but after Nancy Pelosi called him racist, after Rashida Tlaib called him an MFer the same week, who did he call to his office to negotiate the budget deal that also ultimately was consummated? Nancy Pelosi. And they worked it out. Now that says something about his ability to lead. His personality, it's Donald Trump. But if you went back to Lyndon Johnson and you had social media, you'd have something similar. Richard Nixon. If you went back and did some of that even with Bill Clinton when social media was in its earliest states, well, not even social media, email, internet was in its earliest states, you'd have a different perspective as well. If you had a 24-hour cable talk cycle, it would be different for those presidents as well. The people elected him. And until the next election, he is our president, and right now, our military is strong, our economy is strong, and outside of meetings like this, most of the people who don't listen to all of those Fox or CNN 24 hours a day almost, they're feeling pretty good about their life. Why can I say that? Because I've met them. I've met them in all sorts of places, not only town halls. So thank you for being here today. We'll be back to a town hall close to you, and we'll do our best to make sure you know about it and stay within the guidance of those that are responsible for our lives.
Are there any more during the recess right now?
There are.
Can you tell us? When are they?
Thank you, David, for
You
being
want
with
to tell
us.
us?
I appreciate it. When is the next one? When is the next one? I don't want Sue to go home to work.
Yes, when is the next?
Friday.
Friday, where is it?
Friday, where?
Friday, it's in Jackson.
And
What time?
I have no idea.
When's the next one after that? Oh, good.
I don't know.
Please let us know.
I don't know. You heard the answers today.
No. You are our representative, sir, in all respects.
It'll be on the website.
This is
thank
our.
you.
Like, how much advance notice? When's it going to be?
On the website when?
I support them if they follow the process. Because you can't select an individual just because he has self-identified, which we want to do. I've just come back from Afghanistan, I think I'm